ban a site here, slow down a service there, block a VPN on Friday and unblock it on Monday because half of the ministries were apparently using it. It was ridiculous, clumsy, almost cartoonish. But this ban, it is different. No slow suffocation like they did with YouTube. No pretending about technical compliance. Just a clean execution. WhatsApp and Telegram calls are gone. And you know what? This abruptness is the point. They want the public to see that no warning is necessary anymore. The Kremlin has stopped even pretending that it owes its citizens a process or an explanation. Just do it. 5 days of rumor, 1 days of testing, and then boom, just like this, it's done. That's not governance, that's a mafia shakedown. And by acting this way, they have sent a message louder than any propaganda broadcast. You guys, you don't matter. You don't get a say. And if you think you do, we will prove you wrong again tomorrow. This isn't just censorship, it's psychological warfare. The Kremlin knows full well that in 2022, when tanks were burning on the outskirts of Kharkov and conflicts were flying home at industrial speed, what really rattled them was not Ukrainian artillery, it was videos spreading faster than their lies. Telegram channels showing reality, WhatsApp groups coordinating who was fleeing and where, families sharing horror stories in real life. That was the real danger to the state. And now, 3 years later, they are making sure that this will never happen again. They do not want another September 2022 with partial mobilization, when draft-dodging men form kilometers-long lines at the Georgian border, guided just simply by the charts and maps their government could not touch. If another catastrophe is coming, and trust me, something is coming, we just don't know what yet, the Kremlin wants every Russian cut off, isolated, dependent only on the safe, quote-unquote, state-approved platforms that report straight back to them. In other words, it is not about just killing your WhatsApp call to your cousin in Berlin. It's about killing your sense that you can act independently as the state at all. We briefly mentioned Russia's own new state-approved messenger, and its name is Max, as some of you guys might have heard. Let's look.
They're doing more than like just taking away WhatsApp. They're taking away their ability to talk to their cousin without the state like knowing everything that they do.
Talk about in our next chapters in more details. Enter Max, the Kremlin's Frankenstein monster for messaging.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't kill you. Probably just throw you in jail or something. Yeah. No, they throw all the people in jail, honestly. There's people that like say really bad things about people. They just get thrown in jail.
VK's proud little offspring, wrapped in the colors of patriotism and digital sovereignty. For years nobody wanted it. Not even the die-hard propagandists used Max for private chats. Because, well, why bother when everyone knew it was basically FSB direct messenger? But with WhatsApp and Telegram GAT, Max suddenly transforms from an unwanted cousin into the only child in the room. You now simply don't have a choice not to use it. The regime does not care if it succeeds commercially. They care that it becomes inescapable. I'll not be surprised if one day all phones sold in Russia would come with pre-installed Max. Normally, the Kremlin would have rolled this out in slow motion. First force the bureaucrats, then the schools, then the local governments, then the life public. Instead, they hit the panic button. The ban comes first, the forced migration later. Why? Because time is suddenly the most precious commodity. The state cannot afford 5 years of patient hurting. They need millions unboarded to monitor and silence nothing. The propaganda machine will frame it as a victory over foreign tech giants, and also Western surveillance, without obviously saying that the surveillance becomes domestic. They will roll out endless TV segments, propaganda about how true patriots, only true patriots use Max, and how traitors click to banned apps through capitalistic VPNs. They'll show grandmothers smiling as they send secure stickers to their grandchildren, shopping lists for their families, things like this. But the reality is far uglier. It is a big brother on steroids. A system where every call, every text, every voice memo exists only to be replayed in some grey office in Lubyanka. That's where the main FSB building is located. And let's not forget the absurd excuses they came with this move. Supposedly it is to fight cybercrime, to save grandma from losing her pension to some scammer using Western apps. I mean, really? After blowing trillions on war, the Kremlin suddenly cares about pensioners' small savings, which is still not even that much, $500. Please, I mean, come on. If they wanted to fight fraud, they would start by arresting their own officials who rob entire regions empty, but no. The narrative is just a smokescreen. The truth is simpler. Max cannot succeed until every alternative is strangled, and strangling has officially begun. But here's the twist. By moving this fast, they are admitting weakness. If Max was truly attractive, if people actually wanted it, the state would not need to criminalize its competition. You don't have to ban iPhones so people can get some kind of Kremlin phones. You don't need to ban when your innovation is garbage, and the Kremlin knows that Max is garbage, which is why it is forcing the entire population into its rotten embrace. But could the ban of WhatsApp and Telegram be just the beginning of something else, much bigger? Let's figure this out in our next chapter. Here is the part that should scare you the most, definitely if you're from Russia. This is not just about messaging apps, this is a part of a bigger rehearsal. The practice runs for something even darker. Did you hear about Nizhny Novgorod, for example? Whole regions cut off from mobile internet under the excuse of drone attack, except that there were no any drones. It was simply a test to see how a Russian city reacts, the entire Russian city, when you rip away its last connection to the outside world. How fast do people panic? How fast do rumors spread without confirmation? How fast does the order collapse? These are not hypotheticals, these are live experiments already in Russia happening right now as we speak. And why now? Because the Kremlin learned the hard way in Ukraine. In 2022, ordinary Russians watched unfiltered war footage on their phones at the comfort of their couches. They saw tanks burning, soldiers crying, mothers begging at their
when they take away all their social media and see how far, and they cut them off from the rest of the world. They see how fast rumors get spread, and they're doing all these experiments on them now. It's like some doomsday, what's it called? Dystopian doomsday shit.
recruitment offices. And that access to truth sparked real resistance, mass protests, exodus and refusal. Now imagine the regime preparing for round 2, another war, maybe in Baltics or in Central Asia, maybe even some stupid mindless escalation against NATO itself. Do you think they will allow Russians to coordinate escape routes or spread footage of blown up columns? Well, obviously no, not this time. This time they want silence, they want darkness. That is precisely why they are running these drills, killing WhatsApp and Telegram calls and then just funneling everyone to Max. Because they know the next war will collapse even faster than Ukraine if the truth leaks out in real time. They have concluded that free communication, not HIMARS, not sanctions, not NATO, this is what is the greatest existential threat to the regime, and so they are cutting it off at the root. And let's be clear, this is not the real concern. This is the Kremlin actively preparing for the day when entire provinces go dark, not just cities. When only way to get information will be on smuggled USB drives like in North Korea, or word of mouth. Obviously much slower. It is a dry run for wartime martial law, except without announcing it. I mean, just think about it. A state that tells you we are just protecting you from cyber fraud is securely just price.
Why Russia, Putin and Xi Jinping, why they North Korea so much, because North Korea has control over their people that they wish they had. That makes sense now. You're oh, how does he get it like that? ships that China sold North Korea after that meeting sunk immediately. And like, now Kim Jong-un is like saying that China is just scamming people on more supplies. Yeah, so like Xi Jinping's like, so oh yeah, it's like ringing the bell like, hey, like all you dictators that everybody hates, come here, come to my country and buy all my war supplies. Yes, I'm your buddy, I'm your only friend right now. And then he like rips them all off, like, because he needs to sell all this stuff to the United States. Yeah, he's been doing it for years. He did that to. It's their own choice. It's America wants to the UN.
It's karma. That's what they do to their citizens. They say that you have one choice to get this. You have one type of soup you can buy, one type of app you can buy, one type of phone you can buy.
And now they're all selling each other. They're all selling each other fake weapons.
Now they only have the one type of weapon they can buy.
That's so funny.
Hacker is secretly just practicing how to plunge your world into silence and darkness of the Iron Curtain the moment it suits them. That's not paranoia, that's a preview. Here is where all the threads tie together into something deeply disturbing. It's not just a messaging app spam, it's not just budget madness, it is not just drills random promises. It's all of it at once. Russia is overspending at wartime levels, reaching into national wealth fund it swore it would never touch, while simultaneously stripping its people of communication rights at record speed. You don't have to be a genius to see the writing on the wall. The Kremlin is gearing up for something, and it is not peace. Every time Russia stripped freedoms in the past, it was a prelude. In 2014, Crimea. In 2022, the invasion of Ukraine. In 2015, well, the Alaska summit with Trump, and suddenly every Russian voice call is now unsafe. Suddenly federal spending spikes beyond reason. Suddenly cybercrime justifies nationwide censorship. Just ask yourself, does that sound like a government simply tightening screws for fun? Or does it sound like a regime clearing the decks for a massive, reckless leap into another catastrophe? The saddest part is that we don't even know the target. We can only speculate. Possibly just another Ukrainian offensive, or maybe a Baltic adventure, or some desperate distraction from internal collapse, who knows. But the pattern is there and it is undeniable. Communication bans plus a budget overdrive equals preparation for war. It is the Kremlin's own algebra of doom. And while they may claim this is about protecting citizens or digital sovereignty, I mean, we've heard these lies before, not one time. In Russia, every protection ends in repression, every security measure ends in more graves. And don't think for a second that ordinary Russians don't feel this. People may joke about MAX, about Roskomnadzor's clumsy censorship, about the ridiculous excuses. But deep down, everyone understands what it means when the state forces you to shut up. It means they are about to do something so outrageous, so destructive, that the truth itself becomes the biggest enemy. And that is what makes this evil combo so terrifying. Well, guys, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support our work, help us to stay independent and see an additional chapter at the end of each episode. Those episodes will be uploaded to my Patreon, the link is down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you on Tuesday.
You know what, Israel and all the Arabs need to join forces and kill Russia. Why not? Why do the Palestinians like Russia?
What's going on right now with Russia is Russia is about to do something crazy. They're about
There's a lot of
to.
Arabs, the Qatar and everything. They can take on Russia, right?
They're probably gonna try to nuke everybody. They're probably gonna try to nuke every single.
You know, we can squash Russia. Why can't Iraq should have gone against Russia? I feel like Israel should have tried to get on Iraq's side because they have nuclear powers, and if Israel got on Iraq's side, I mean, how powerful could they have been? And they could have
it is considered.
France have reportedly been told to prepare for a major military engagement.
For the first time in decades, the French military is preparing for the unthinkable.
Now, here in France, the French government is working on a survival guide to help the French population in the case of war.
And why they seem to think that we're going to be possibly at war with Russia.
France has ordered hospitals to prepare for war with Russia. Every single hospital across the country has been ordered to prepare. For a major conflict expected in 2026. Hospitals are being upgraded, emergency facilities are being reinforced, and doctors are being instructed to prepare for a massive influx of wounded soldiers. Not just French troops, but also foreign soldiers from NATO allies. By March of 2026, these preparations will be visible everywhere, and experts warn of a bigger conflict than World War I and II. Sounds cold, right? Because it actually is.
This force does not intend or aim to wage any wars against Russia, but it is a force that must guarantee peace and send a very clear strategic signal.
And not just France, but Britain is secretly rebuilding its military. Norway is restoring the Cold War-era bunkers hidden deep inside of mountains. And countries along Russia's borders are now training their young citizens for a conflict. A war that would be insanely expensive. Russia versus NATO would cost the world over $1.5 trillion. And if the conflict stretches on and on like World War II, the impact would be more catastrophic. So, despite being an economic mess, why does Russia want a war with NATO? And most importantly, what would be the consequences of that war? Now, this is going to be a bit of a controversial topic, and I don't care if YouTube doesn't promote it because I'm going to be exposed. They warned that a large-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine was almost certain. Soon, the world began to see the signs. Satellite images, social media posts, and intelligence reports from November and December of 2021 showed tanks, missiles, and heavy weaponry moving towards Ukraine's borders. But the Kremlin stayed silent. By mid-December of 2021, Russia's foreign ministry issued a clear demand. NATO must stop its military activity in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, and Ukraine must never be allowed to join NATO. Yes, you heard that right. The Russia-Ukraine conflict was never just about Ukraine. It has always been about NATO. To understand this rivalry, we need to go back in time, to the origins of Russia and NATO's long-standing rivalry. You see, World War II ended in 1945, but peace really didn't last that long. By 1948, the Soviet Union refused to withdraw its forces from Eastern Europe and even blockaded Berlin, tightening its grip on the region. In response, the United States and its allies created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, better known as NATO, in 1949. At the time, NATO started with just 12 founding members: the US, Britain, France, Canada, Italy, the Netherlands, Iceland, Belgium, Luxembourg, Norway, Portugal, and Denmark. Its mission was simple: to protect each other from any outside attack. It was a no-brainer for almost every country to join NATO. The reason was NATO's most important article. Under Article 5 of NATO's treaty, if one NATO country is attacked, it is considered an attack on all NATO countries. So it would act as a shield for any country joining NATO. But from the very beginning, Moscow never saw NATO as a defensive alliance, but as America's military power inside Europe, a tool to contain and weaken Moscow. Then came 1991. The Soviet Union collapsed into 15 independent countries: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. With this collapse, Russia's nightmare started to worsen. One after another, many of these former Soviet states started moving closer to NATO, because they knew that if they didn't join, Russia would try to acquire them again. In 2004, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, 3 countries that once belonged to the Soviet Union, officially joined NATO. In 2008, Georgia and Ukraine were offered NATO membership, but they couldn't join back then, partially because of Russia's influence over their governments. Russia wasn't just after Ukraine's land. It wanted to stop NATO's expansion, because if all of Russia's neighboring countries joined NATO, then in any future conflict, the US military would have the legal right to deploy troops directly on Russia's borders. For any Russian president, that would be the biggest humiliation in history. But for Putin, it was something more important: his long-term dream. You see, Putin doesn't want to revive the Soviet Union. He wants to restore the Russian Empire. An empire that once included Ukraine, Poland, Finland, and much of Eastern Europe. Ukraine shares a 1,900-kilometer, or about 1,200-mile border with Russia, and this acts as a buffer zone, a shield between Russia and the West. That's why, in December of 2021, Russia demanded that Ukraine must never join NATO. But the United States and NATO rejected Russia's demands, warning Moscow of severe economic sanctions if it invaded. Then came February of 2022. Satellite images revealed the largest deployment of Russian troops near Belarus since the Cold War. And soon after, the world watched in shock as Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In the beginning, Russia may have started the Ukraine war believing that if it threatened the West through military action, Europe and the US would step back and abandon their plans of including Ukraine in NATO. Putin thought that once Ukraine returned to Russia's influence, Moscow can then push further, demanding the withdrawal of other neighboring countries that were once part of the Warsaw Pact, a military alliance signed in 1955 as a countermeasure against NATO's formation. But this strategy backfired. Even after threatening Europe through the Ukraine war, Russia failed to stop NATO's expansion. In April of 2023, Finland officially joined NATO, adding another massive 1,340-kilometer, or about 830-mile border between Russia and the alliance. A move that completely reshaped the strategic map of Europe. This doubled NATO's direct land border with Russia overnight, and completely changed the strategic map of Europe. But the pressures didn't stop there. In March of 2024, Sweden also joined NATO, giving the alliance full control over the Baltic Sea region. Now, let's look at the map. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland are already NATO members. With Finland and Sweden on board, the only two neighbors of Russia not in NATO are Belarus and Ukraine. For Russia, this was like a big red flashing light like you see in those movies, right? Warning, warning. This growing encirclement made Putin angry, because for him, this isn't just about geopolitics. It's personal humiliation. Like every other dictator and authoritarian leader, power means everything to Putin. And according to prospect theory, leaders like him take far bigger risks when they feel like they are losing power, territory, or influence. This is also the reason why, even after 4 years of continuous war, Putin's goal has shifted. It's no longer just about Ukraine. It's no longer just about stopping NATO expansion. Putin wants something far bigger. He wants NATO troops withdrawn from all of Russia's neighboring countries. But there's a problem with that. Russia understands that Ukraine will not surrender, and Europe and the United States will continue supporting Ukraine no matter how long this war lasts. For Putin, this leaves only one path. To win against NATO, he must drag the war on for as long as possible and slowly and steadily capture territories. Because if Russia directly attacks Europe, it cannot survive against NATO, as no matter how big the Russian army is, it simply cannot match NATO's overwhelming numbers, resources, and military strength. And the numbers clearly show that. According to NATO's official data, in 2024, the combined defense spending of all NATO member countries was around $1.45 trillion US dollars. By comparison, Russia's defense budget was only $140 billion, less than 15% of NATO's total spending. And when it comes to manpower, the gap is even bigger. If NATO decides to engage directly in a conflict with Russia, it could deploy over 3.3 million soldiers, including 40,000 elite troops already on high alert, ready to move within hours. Russia, on the other hand, has around 1.2 million soldiers in total, with only about 800,000 active troops, and even that number has been heavily affected by its losses in Ukraine. Putin knows he cannot win a direct confrontation, at least not yet. That's why Russia is stretching the Ukraine war for as long as possible. It's draining Europe's and America's military strength and economic power while buying time to rebuild Russia's forces and prepare for a bigger conflict. Since the invasion, the United States has committed over $118 billion in assistance to Ukraine, including $65 billion in direct military aid. By early 2023, the Biden administration approved the delivery of increasingly advanced weaponry to Kyiv, from the Patriot air defense system, designed to counter Russian missile strikes, to modern battle tanks, capable of changing the dynamics on the ground. And that's not all. The US has significantly boosted its troop presence in Europe, stationing over 100,000 American soldiers across the continent to reinforce NATO's eastern flank and deter Russian aggression. Russia is silently calculating all the funding, military strength, alliances, and resources of the West to find the right time to start a war against Europe, and multiple intelligence agencies have already warned about this possibility. In February of 2025, Denmark's state news agency reported that Russia has already upgraded its military capacity, modernized its weapons, and boosted its defense production to levels not seen since the Cold War. Russia's strategy is clear: more troops, more weapons, and more military power. The Kremlin had already planned to increase its defense spending by 25% in 2025, taking it to an all-time record high of 13.5 trillion rubles. That's about $143 billion. This is 3 trillion rubles more than this year's budget, which is already the highest in Russian history. In 2025, spending on defense and security combined will reach a staggering 41.5 trillion rubles, 40% of Russia's entire government budget. Moscow is moving ahead with plans to expand its forces and form new divisions, not just brigades, positioning many of them close to NATO's borders. One of the biggest developments is the creation of the 44th Army Corps in Karelia, right near the border with Finland, a country that just joined NATO in 2023. In September of 2024, President Vladimir Putin announced plans to expand Russia's armed forces to a total of 2.39 million personnel, including 1.5 million active servicemen. And to hit this target, Moscow needs over 180,000 new recruits, because of which they are hiring youngsters at full speed. Even many young Russians don't want to join. Russia's spring draft of 2025 has called up 160,000 conscripts, 10,000 more than the same period in 2024. To get more men in uniform, Moscow has even raised the maximum draft age from 27 to 30, making millions more eligible for compulsory military service. And this time, the process is different. Notices are not just being sent by mail, but also digitally through the Gosuslugi government portal. To avoid army recruitment, many young Russians are trying to avoid military service by applying for alternative civilian services. But according to a human rights lawyer, Timofey Vatskin, every new draft has become a lottery, with authorities constantly finding new ways to get more soldiers in the army. And it doesn't stop there. Apart from the twice-yearly conscription, Russia is also recruiting contract soldiers and even thousands of fighters from North Korea to strengthen its ranks. According to reports, over 100,000 Russian soldiers have been confirmed killed, and experts believe the real number could be more than double. But despite these losses, Putin has increased the size of the Russian military 3 times since launching the Ukraine invasion in February of 2022. And even as the war in Ukraine continues, Russia is strengthening its position in the Nordic-Baltic region. This gives Moscow a potential first-mover advantage in any future conflict, even if many of its new units are still under strength. But that's not all. Russia maintains powerful air defense systems, electronic warfare units, and advanced military exercises around the Baltic Sea. And its gray zone activities like cyber attacks, intelligence operations, and small-scale provocations are increasing every passing day. Now, here's the part that worries NATO. According to the IISS analysis, Russia has already replenished much of its equipment losses from Ukraine. Its ground forces have adapted, reorganized, and could fully recover to pre-2022 strength by 2026 or 2027. And Moscow isn't stopping there. It's expected to fully equip its expanded army by 2030 to 2035 if production continues at its current pace. Even though Russia's Black Sea Fleet has suffered heavy losses, its Baltic Fleet and Northern Fleet remain largely untouched. And how can you forget, Russia's Northern Fleet operates its most advanced strategic missile submarines, including the Yasen-M-class nuclear-powered cruise missile submarines. These are supported by Gorshkov-class frigates, armed with Caliber land attack cruise missiles capable of long-range deep strikes anywhere in Europe. In the Baltic Sea, Russia's naval forces remain a serious threat. They can deploy missile-armed patrol craft, naval mines, and even amphibious assaults on strategic islands and key infrastructure, all part of a larger anti-access and area denial strategy